In this video, I'm going to show you how to evaluate with function notation. So versus what we did in a previous video with a graph, in this case, you're given two separate equations. One of the equations is the function 2x plus 9, and another function that we're going to evaluate is a cube function, x cubed minus 3x plus 1. And now the reason why these are given function notation is because if they labeled your function like this, y is equal to 2x plus 9, and if they had labeled this function y is equal to x cubed minus 3x plus 1, is because with function notation you can distinguish between which function you want to use, because if we were to say evaluate y equals 10, how would you know which equation to use? And so instead they give the function a name. So they're calling this the f equation essentially, and this the g equation. So instead of calling it y, they give it function notation, which is kind of like just giving it a name. So really all this is telling you is that this function is the g function and this function is the f function. And so now I know what to evaluate, and if they were also to say plug in x equals 2, since these both have x's, how would you know which one to plug in? Do I plug in 2 over here or do I plug in 2 over there? It's less confusing because they have given your function a name. And so when you see f of 5, that means I'm going to be using this equation here. And what f of 5 means that in place of your x, you're going to plug in the number 5 for x. So notice how this x got replaced with the number 5. So that means substitute in for your x value of 5. So I'm going to take 2 times 5 and get the number 10. And if I add 9, my answer is 19. Now for this function, it says f, so I know I'm going to be using this function over here. And in place of my x, so notice how my x got replaced with the number 9. So just like this equation, but now over here, I'm still substituting for x, but in this case, I'm going to plug in the number 9 instead. So f of 9 will be now instead 2 times 9, because look how my x turned into 9. And now when I solve here, I'm going to have 2 times 9, which is 18, and 18 plus 9 is 27. Now look at here, we're evaluating for x, but notice how they tell you that we're going to use the other function because the other function has the name of g. So if my g function is an x cubed minus a 3x plus 1, now I know I'm substituting for x, but with the other function. So in place of my x, in every x you see of the function, we're going to plug in its place, we're going to substitute in the number 7. So I'm going to take 7 to the 3rd power, subtract 3 times 7, and then add 1. So I'm going to get my calculator out, and I'm going to take 7 to the 3rd power. So I'm going to use my caret key, this button over here, kind of diagonal from the 7, and 7 cubed is 343. 3 times 7 is 21, so I'm going to subtract that, and then add 1 at the end. So I'm going to take 343 minus 21 and add 1, and I get an answer of 323. Now for this function, I want to replace, again, using the other function, the green highlighted one. G of x is equal to x cubed minus 3x plus 1. I'm going to sub in place of my x the number -4. So I'm going to take -4 and cube it, subtract 3 times the -4, and add 1. So I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to clear out what I had. Now in parentheses, because when you evaluate you need to put in parentheses, I'm going to take the number -4 and I'm going to raise it to the 3rd power. And that number is negative 64. Now negative 3 times negative 4 is going to be plus a 12 here, and then plus 1 more. So negative 64 plus 12 and plus 1 more would be a total of negative 51. Now watch what changes here. Do you see how it says x? Find the x value. Find x if your function had been set equal to 17. So notice how this is outside. And notice how this number was inside. When you see the number inside, that means input. And when you see the number outside here, that means output. And what value, x or y, is your output? Well, if your input was x, that means your output is y. So if my function is y is equal to a 2x plus 9, that's my f function. If my output is 17, I'm going to find the x value. So solve for x when your output is 17. So in place of y, I'm going to put 17 equal to 2x plus 9. And now I can solve for my letter x, which is my input because I was given my output. So I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. And when I do that, I'm left with the number 8. 8 is equal to 2x. And if I divide both sides by 2, my input would have been the number 4. Now in this question here, again, solve for x when your function, so this pink function here, when your output is 21. So see how that's outside? That's your output, which is the letter y. So our function was y equals a 2x plus 9. My output I'm now replacing with the number 21. And now I can solve for x, because my x is still in my function. So if my output was 21, I'll subtract 9 on both sides. And in this case, I'm going to get the number 12 is equal to 2x. And if I divide both sides by 2, 12 divided by 2 would give me a solution of 6. Awesome.